The morning sun crept slowly over Ridgeway High, spilling golden light across the cracked pavement of the schoolyard. The air was crisp, almost deceptively peaceful, but for Aaliyah Carter, peace was something she hadn't felt in weeks. She stepped off the bus with her head held high, her braids swaying gently against her back, her dark brown eyes scanning the courtyard. She could already feel the shift in energy, the glances that lingered too long, the subtle hush of conversations when she walked past. She didn't have to guess why. She already knew. The rumor. It had started the previous Thursday, just one careless, spiteful whisper in the cafeteria. Someone said her father had been dishonorably discharged from the army. Not just that, but that he'd abandoned his unit during combat. It was a lie so ugly, so sharp, it could cut through her like glass if she let it. Her father, Sergeant David Carter, was the farthest thing from a coward. He was a decorated veteran, a man who had put his life on the line in places she couldn't even imagine, a man who had missed birthdays and holidays so he could protect families like theirs. But in high school, lies travel faster than truth, and once they take root, they're almost impossible to kill. As she made her way toward the main entrance, she kept her steps even and her shoulders squared, the way her dad had taught her. "Walk like you have somewhere to be," he always said. "Bullies smell fear the way dogs smell meat." Funny, she thought, that dogs were on her mind this morning. Aaliyah's family didn't just have pets, they had protectors. Max and Shadow were two massive German shepherds, trained military working dogs who had served alongside her father overseas. When he retired from active duty, he'd been given the rare privilege of adopting them. They weren't just animals to the Carters, they were family. Loyal, intelligent, and fiercely protective. Max was the older one, his muzzle dusted with silver, his eyes sharp but kind. Shadow was younger, faster, and carried an intensity that could unsettle strangers in seconds. Both had been trained to respond to threats with surgical precision. But here's the thing, Aaliyah had never used them for intimidation. She loved them for their gentleness with her, the way Max rested his head in her lap when she did homework, the way Shadow followed her from room to room like a shadow indeed. They weren't weapons to her, they were guardians. Unfortunately, humans weren't always as loyal as dogs. Connor, Brent, Maddie, and Kayla, the four self-appointed kings and queens of Ridgeway High's social hierarchy, had been on Aaliyah's case since the start of the semester. At first, it was small things, comments about her hair, jokes about army brats. Then it became bolder, bumping her in the hall, stealing her notebooks, whispering things when she walked by. When the rumor about her dad spread, they took it as a personal invitation to turn her life into a spectacle. Connor was the loud one, tall with a permanent smirk that said he thought the whole world existed for his amusement. Brent was his shadow, stockier, quieter, but meaner when he thought no one was watching. Maddie was the queen bee, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfectly cruel words. And Kayla, well, Kayla was the one who laughed the hardest, even if you could tell sometimes it was just to fit in. That morning, Aaliyah spotted them by the bleachers, the early sunlight glinting off Connor's chain necklace. "Well, look who it is," Connor called out as she walked past. His voice was loud enough to draw attention from nearby students. The military princess herself. Brent stepped forward, blocking her path. "Hey, we were just talking about you. You should tell us, how's it feel to be the daughter of a coward?" A hush rippled through the small crowd forming around them. Aaliyah's stomach clenched, but her expression didn't change. "Move," she said. Maddie tilted her head, faux sympathy dripping from her tone. "Ah, touchy subject?" "Move," Aaliyah repeated, her voice like steel. But instead of moving, they closed in, forming a loose circle, cutting off her escape. And then, it happened. The sound of claws clicking against pavement. Sharp, steady, deliberate. From behind the chain-link fence near the athletic field, two massive shapes emerged. Max's silvered muzzle caught the sun first, followed by the dark, sleek form of Shadow. They moved with the controlled precision of soldiers, heads low, eyes locked on the cluster of teens surrounding Aaliyah. The crowd went still. The dogs didn't growl. They didn't bark. They simply advanced, step by step, until they were flanking Aaliyah, Max on her right, Shadow on her left. Their bodies were taut, their ears pricked, their gaze unwavering. Connor's smirk faltered. Those yours?" Aaliyah allowed herself the faintest smile. They're my dad's. Military working dogs. Trained to protect. Max shifted his weight just slightly, a subtle but unmistakable signal that he was ready to act if needed. Shadow's gaze locked on Brent, who took an involuntary step back. Nobody moved for several long seconds. Then, slowly, the bullies began to retreat, their bravado melting into uncertainty. The crowd dissolved, murmuring. For the first time in months, Aaliyah walked forward without hearing their voices behind her. But that was just the beginning. The bullies didn't disappear overnight. They switched tactics, quieter jabs, exclusion from group projects, nasty notes slipped into her locker. It wore on her. There were nights she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why people found it so easy to hate what they didn't understand. One Friday, she came home to find her dad cleaning Max's gear, leather harnesses, worn but well-kept collars. "You did good today," he said without looking up. "How do you know?" she asked, slumping into the couch. "Because Max and Shadow came home tired. Means they had to work." He looked at her then, his expression gentle but firm. "But you know, Lee, dogs can only do so much. The rest? That's you." She swallowed hard. "It doesn't feel like I'm winning." "That's because winning isn't about shutting people down. It's about showing them there's a better way to stand tall." And she took that to heart. Aaliyah began volunteering after school, tutoring kids who were struggling in math and reading. She joined the Animal Welfare Club, and one day, she brought Max and Shadow for a presentation about military dogs, how they saved lives, tracked missing people, and worked in dangerous conditions most humans couldn't handle. She noticed something interesting that day. Even the students who had once mocked her leaned in to listen. They asked questions. Some even smiled. The rumor about her father began to lose its grip, replaced by stories of bravery, stories she told honestly and openly. She spoke about the night her dad's unit was ambushed overseas, and how Max had found 2 injured soldiers under rubble. She told them how Shadow had been trained to detect explosives and had likely saved dozens of lives. One rainy afternoon, she spotted Kayla sitting alone on the school steps, her hoodie pulled tight around her face. "You okay?" Aaliyah asked. Kayla hesitated. "Family stuff. You wouldn't get it." Aaliyah sat down beside her. "Maybe I would. Military family stuff means missing people you love. Hearing rumors you wish people wouldn't spread." Kayla looked at her, and for a moment, the mask slipped. "I didn't start the rumor," she said quietly. "But I didn't stop it either." Aaliyah nodded slowly. "Then maybe now's your chance to do better." By the end of the year, Aaliyah wasn't the same girl who had stepped off the bus that morning with dread in her chest. She had learned that strength wasn't just having 2 loyal German shepherds at your side, it was finding the courage to keep showing up, to keep standing tall, to keep being kind even when kindness wasn't returned. The bullies? They weren't her friends. But they weren't her enemies anymore either. And sometimes, that's enough. Every time Max and Shadow walked with her, heads high and eyes sharp, she knew she was never truly alone. Message to viewers. If you've ever been bullied, I want you to hear me, you are not alone. You have more strength in you than you think, and sometimes, your quiet dignity will be louder than any insult. Share your story in the comments. Let someone else see your courage. This is Be Kind Always. If this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe for more real, powerful stories, and remember, kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest weapon you can carry.